Got rid of your pillows and blankets, so.
RJ brought us Jimmy Doan.
Didn't bring me any. I'm starving.
There's still more back
What's
there.
that? Is there?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm gonna go find it.
Before or after this?
What's that?
Before or after this?
Do we get time before? I'm kidding. I better stay where I am here for now. All right, go ahead, you guys.
Well, I'll just start out here with kind of had a couple of days here to kind of process what's been the ups and downs of this year and what they mean for this group going ahead here for the summer and next season also.
Well, a couple of days is, it's a little bit to gain some perspectives, and you started your question with the ups and downs, and that's one of the things that stands out here. As we're sitting on day one of the National Hockey League playoffs, and we're not part of it. The inconsistencies in our play throughout the year have brought us to this point. There's a lot of substance within that lead to those results, and those are the things. I'm about halfway through my player meetings right now. Most of the player meetings have been really good, just straight up honest discussions, not necessarily individually based. We've got some really smart guys. We've got some great veterans, and everybody cares a lot. So today is, as we gain perspective, it's also day one or day two of working towards solving some of the issues that led to some of our inconsistencies, and making sure we're doing the right things to work towards a different outcome.
How much do you feel that a good start out of the gate next year has a lot to do with improving matters?
So it's a hard league to chase. I talk about that on an individual night basis. It's hard, if you're down a goal or two early, it's hard to chase games. If you look statistically, it's difficult to win games that way. No different to do that when you start a season, and that was, if you look at some of the stretches, some of the positive stretches, the difficult stretches that we had. The first one that I look to is, starting the year 1-4-1. You're immediately playing catch up from there, and maybe that doesn't sound like a lot, and certainly that's not insurmountable. By Thanksgiving, we had gotten ourselves back to 500, but it's a difficult league to chase a season when you have a start like that puts you behind from the very start.
One of the things we heard today was about consistently from players, the challenges with finding scoring and offensive direction. And Jordan pointed out, he said he thought goaltending and defense took positive steps this year. Aside from personnel changes, is there anything that you can change schematically to come back next year and be able to produce some more offense?
Well, it's not all schematically and it's not all personnel. It's a combination of the two. And some of it's connected to your play defensively. A lot of it actually is connected to your play defensively. So, when I look at scoring, or when I look at a drop-off in scoring, there's a couple of things that come to mind. Sometimes you have to find different ways to win, which we were able to do at different times through the year. We were able to be on some great stretches. We went 13 games without losing. So for a team that can't score, we must be doing something right during that stretch. The consistency to sustain that through the 82-game schedule, obviously we didn't do that. But when I look at scoring, specifically our 5-on-5 scoring dropped off in a couple of areas, in a couple of very specific areas. Scoring off the rush was down. We're 20-some-odd goals down there. Scoring off of quick strike areas, and that's not an NHL stat, quick strike, but that's off the forecheck, that's off your reload, that's off of tracking the puck and turning it over quickly and being able to create offense quickly. We were down in that area, so it's not just a confidence offensively. That's a defensive piece as well. And a consistent five-man defensive piece that creates and generates quick strike offense on the going the other direction, whether it's off your forecheck or off, as I said, off your reload. So there's some areas that we have to become more connected in. That's very apparent. And those are things that, like I said, these are areas, and this is day one of making sure we're working at the combination of two things, the system piece as well as. It's not just personnel, it's chemistry amongst personnel. It's roles amongst personnel. Those when you combine roles and empowerment in roles and acceptance in roles, you combine chemistry amongst players, you combine that with depth, you can overcome a lot of different challenges, which you have to do during the NHL season. You have to be able to overcome tough stretches where you're not feeling great offensively. You have to be able to overcome stretches where your injuries start to stack up a little bit. That's part of the NHL season. You have to overcome stretches of the schedule that look a little bit unfair, because everybody has parts, and stretches during a schedule that don't make a lot of sense. So you have to overcome those imperfect days. And as I said, chemistry, roles, depth, all of those things lead to overcoming those challenges.
Dave, we've heard this morning, pro athletes, proud athletes, always believe if they don't succeed, it's because they didn't do enough or they could have done more. Is it possible that this group's ceiling is closer to what you had this year than the success you had last year?
We believe we had a really good chance, and we believe we belong in the National Hockey League playoffs. So to answer your question, every year is a little bit different. The way you have to build your year and construct a successful year to gain a playoff spot is going to look a little bit different. Maybe the average is somewhere in between. I believe this year's team had a real good opportunity to be a playoff team. Little things. We came into the NHL trade deadline this year 6 points out of a playoff spot. 6 points out of a playoff spot. We had come off of a win in Calgary, came off of a hard-fought win in Winnipeg. We did that without Wenny. We did that without Dunner in the lineup. We were soon to lose Schwartzy coming up, but we were in a spot to be in the hunt. 6 points is actually a pretty big number. So let's flip that around. At that point in time, we had lost 11 games in a shootout or overtime. Half those points put us at or above the playoff level, right? And that all of a sudden, that changes the perspective, and that allows us to change our approach at the deadline, amongst other things. So we really have to look at a lot of things. It's not just scoring. It's not just evaluating what the individual people on the roster look like. It's the collective group, and it's a collection of the results over several months that led us to being 6 points out at that point. 6 points doesn't sound like a lot. It's quite a lot in order to be able to make that up in the last 7 weeks of a season. But those are 6 points that we could have affected in the first 4.5 months of the season.
Jumping off of that, I think you finished with 13 overtime losses this year. What did you see once you got beyond 60 minutes? It was a struggle for you guys to be able to find wins in the end.
And we were 1-under on shootouts, so we won some shootout games this year. We made some mistakes defensively in overtime that were uncharacteristic of us, and we cost ourselves games in that regard. So some of it is growth and maturity that's necessary. Some of it's personnel in the right spots. Some of it is chemistry of those three guys that are out there. There's a lot of different aspects of the shootouts and of the OT that we can continue to grow in. The reality is, I talked about it this year, we're going to be in a lot of close, tight games. We have to be comfortable in those situations, in those scenarios. Obviously, we have to do a better job. So that's upon, hey, that starts with me right here, making sure that we're improved in those situations and those scenarios. There's others as well. There's ways to gain extra points. When we're down by a goal, to be able to score a goal 6-on-5 and gain that extra point. So it's not just the shootout or points or the OT points that you happen to lose. It's other ways of gaining and finding an extra point along the way. That as a team, that I'm convinced we're going to continue to be in close hockey games. The results are going to be are going to be tight. We're going to have to be comfortable, and we have to be improved in these areas that allow you to find an extra point along the way in the month of October, the month of November.
How close do you feel this team is to naming you captain again?
I believe that's a discussion that we'll have this summer, and I'm not leading you either way on that. That's a discussion that I think is a valid discussion to have, as we get into the early part of this off season.
Dave, philosophically, what are the goals you have for your meetings with players today?
I want to learn as much as we can about the mindset and the space that our players are in 48 hours after coming out of the season. That's really the goal. So anything that any questions, any areas, any topics that can provoke just real, honest discussion is what I'm looking for in our meetings. And we're about halfway through right now, and I've had some great, honest discussions. I told you, we've got some smart guys. We've got very proud guys. We have guys that are hurting right now. Feel disappointed. Feel there's a piece of embarrassment of we're out of the playoffs. It leaves you wanting. There's a piece of responsibility, a huge piece of responsibility to our fan base, and the disappointment of not living up to those expectations from within. So those are all things that we want to provoke real discussion in our meetings. There's no cookie cutter set of questions. Every person is different. Every personality is different. Everybody's experience this year has been different personally. So we're just trying to get to the heart of some of the real matters.
David, there are players that have elevated their game this year overall. Everybody has their ups and downs.
Yeah, absolutely. The easy discussion is on some of the drop-offs, and some of the drop-offs that we look at are the easiest thing to do is look at point totals, right? We went from a year where I think we had 7 or 8 guys that had career years to a couple of guys that did, and others that their totals have dropped. But when I look at the growth of Will Borgen this year, that's something that maybe doesn't draw a lot of attention, but tremendous growth in his role and in his comfortability in his role, and really I think points to some really positive things to come in the future. The growth of our goaltending tandem and the job that they did together. Those are just a couple of them. There's for sure there's others for me that when I talk about growth and development as an organization being hard at times, this is that day. These are hard, but there is growth from within. There are huge steps that have been taken individually, collectively. Now we have to make sure that we do a better job in a collective sense so that the outcome is different.
Dave, how significant did you feel like Shane's performance was his last time up, and did you see enough to give you maybe some more clarity on where he might be at the start of next season for you?
Really positive performances for Shane. In his games with us here at the end of the season. The offensive piece is the easy one again to evaluate, and he produced there. He produced on a consistent basis, and he looked like he was ready to do it. Right. Those some of the goals that he scored were National Hockey League level goals. They were goals from inside that were on and off his tape. So very, very positive in that sense. Some of the other growth is a little bit harder to evaluate through stats, but things that you see with your eye. Much more comfortable with the puck on his tape in tight spaces, getting us out of our zone. Really a ton of advancement in his game defensively, positionally. From stick detail to positioning of his feet and his body. So we saw some great growth in his game. I don't want to put the pressure on him of what that means as we come into September, October. I want him to have a great run in the playoffs with Coachella Valley. He's part of a great group there, and he's been a huge part of that group and their success. Go and enjoy that, continue growth, have a great summer, and come to training camp with a great mindset. I know that he'll do that, and I'm really looking forward to that opportunity. That'll be the next opportunity to see him here on this ice surface.
Your team commitment to defense is a bright spot. You were, by goals against, a top 10 defense. Will you speak about that? Because you really won't have to get a whole lot more offense to turn around a lot of the games that weren't won this year.
Well, the commitment to the defensive side of the game is, part of that is a continued growth in the understanding of the system for everybody. We're now, for a lot of guys, you're 2-3 years into the system. Defensively, the way we play it really requires everybody, as any system, 5 guys to be doing things on the same page. There's a ton of work for our centermen. There's a lot of pressure on our defensemen and our low forward defensively to be able to kill plays, cut plays, and get us out of the zone. If we don't do that, you're spending extra time in your zone. So our efficiency in our system defensively, especially in our D zone, has continued to grow. The area that I believe we can continue to grow is just our 5-man gaps up and down the rink can continue to become more automatic. There can continue to be more trust, more connectivity between your forwards, your D, between all 5 guys. So we're going to continue to grow defensively. That's not going to be something that we're going to have the luxury of just resting on our laurels. We're going to have to make a real distinct effort to put an emphasis on it early in training camp. We're going to have to, really be distinct in the areas that we want to grow in defensively, because again, those areas are going to be part of what helps us become more potent once again offensively. Because in this league, to score, you've got to do it quickly. You've got to do it off transition. You've got to do it as quick as you can after that puck is turned over in your favor. So it's all going to continue to be connected. And the defensive piece, to be good in this league, to have a chance to really be successful, to have a chance to really be a top team, you have to be good defensively. That's goaltending. That's 5 guys in front of the goaltenders, and that's everybody on the same page, competing really hard in a defensive sense without the puck.
Dave?
After the Montreal game, you said the team had a choice to make about whether to play the right way the rest of the way. With that stretch now over, how do you think they've responded to that challenge?
Our guys competed hard down the stretch. Games, when you're out of the playoffs and you fall out of the playoffs, and you're dealing with that discouragement and that disappointment, that's a difficult time. But you have to get over that. You have to play with purpose for other reasons. Accepting that fact is one of the biggest factors. That's hard. As we've talked about some of the pride that you take in playing meaningful games, in being part of the playoff hunt. So, having that realization that, hey, we're not part of it, but there are other things at stake here that are very, very important. Our guys, I believe our guys did a good job of that. Just down the last stretch here, we lost our last game at home. It's the first time in my career in the NHL that I've been part of a team that's had 102 shot attempts. We didn't mail that one in, you guys. We didn't mail that one in. We didn't score that night. So we were disappointed by that. But was the mindset right going in? Yeah, we could have had 5 in the first period, but it didn't work out that way. The 4-game road trip to finish the year, I looked at it at the start of the year, being convinced that we were going to be in a playoff hunt, and that was going to be a stretch that we were going to have to solidify a playoff spot in. I knew how challenging it would be. Okay, but we went into Dallas. Dallas still has the President's Trophy on the line that night. We played a hell of a game in Dallas, and that was was a winnable game for us. We looked like a tired team in St. Louis, but it wasn't due to lack of compete. I felt like we could have won the game in Winnipeg against a team that was trying to solidify home. They needed 1 point to solidify home ice advantage against Colorado. They had a lot on the line. We played hard. We played well against a really good hockey team that doesn't give up very much that night, and we had the pride to finish it off the right way in Minnesota. We didn't coast, and that shows me once again, it was important to the guys to play with pride, to play for one another, and most importantly, to work as hard as they could to play hard and with pride in front of our fans.
Dave, what was a high point and a low point for you this season?
I haven't thought of that yet. You know, an easy high point to point to is, or you know, to discuss is the Winter Classic here. More because of the event in our city, in our community, and what it meant, you know, for our organization. It was a hell of a lot of fun. Let's be honest. You know, that was a great day. But we certainly didn't want that to be the pinnacle of our season. You know. So for me, it's hard to really get to that yet mentally. I'm not there. I can tell you, the low point is, you know, at the end of the season, getting on the plane and knowing that you're not coming home to prepare to play a playoff game. I can distinctly tell you that. You know, a specific day along the way that became that was a disappointment or a result. I don't have that for you yet. It's a collective result after 82 games. You know, the one and only result that you're working towards for those 82 games is to have an opportunity to play in the playoffs, with the idea that you're not just getting in to be in, you're getting in to go win hockey games and win series.
Dave, no team's going to have their A game every night, but felt like there was a lot of times this season you and the players are saying, you know, we had stretches where we weren't playing the level we want to play, we didn't start the way we wanted to start. Do you have any sense of why there was so many instances of that when you didn't have that edge?
Yeah, you know, the start of our year, we really have to own. I got to own that piece of it. 1-4-1 to start the year. Ultimately the results, you know, of that 6-game stretch, you know, speak to the real sheer purpose that we stepped into the year with, and that's not a conscious decision, but at times as I look back on it, you know, it almost appeared that we wanted to fast forward to game 82, to the spoils of a successful season, and we were so excited to try to get back to the playoffs that we maybe missed a step there, and that's just mentally, and it doesn't take very much. It doesn't take very much at all. So that stretch was one that's that's purely on us. Each of the other stretches, as I look to them, you know, I mentioned before the power of chemistry, the power of buying into roles, the power of being able to understand and clearly own your role, right? So I'm not putting that on the players. That's all of us. That's coaches defining roles and helping everybody understand the importance of them. That chemistry, those roles, the depth that comes with it, allow you to overcome some of the challenges of like I said, of the NHL schedule. Each one of the tough stretches that we went through had an element of us running into injuries, illness, different things like that. I can think back to the game in Columbus. That was our 13th game, I believe, in a row with gaining points. I mean, we were 11-0-2 at that point in time. We lost Maddie and Dunner that night. We had Berkey that was out of the lineup, Gruby, Belly, and then the next night in Pittsburgh, I looked down at Adam Larson after one shift, and I knew that he was done with this some kind of flu bug that had hit our group, right? Those are all things that, you know, to me, the chemistry elements that make you a really good team, help you to overcome. And even if you don't win that hockey game, they allow you to bounce back and push back quickly in the next game, the next 2 games. And we weren't able to find that element often enough. We had too many stretches of games where the losses piled up to more than 2-3 games. They added, you know, all of a sudden you're at 6 games without winning, 8 games without winning, and those were catastrophic to us. So we have to look within at that chemistry and you know, at the ability to bounce back in those situations, and you know, we have to find a little bit more inner strength to be able to push back on those scenarios and turn those stretches around much more quickly.
Hey, Dave, I'm curious, acknowledging all kinds of factors into play, what's your ideal blend of veterans versus youth? You got some young guys like Maddie, Riker, Todd, maybe Shane next year. I mean, what would your ideal kind of mix be if you didn't have those things that maybe sometimes come into play? Like
Well, I think you have to start with, our situation in terms of, as an organization, we're growing from within. So we're going to continue to see youth entering into our lineup, coming into our roster. So, I don't know if there is an ideal mix in terms of, veterans, rookies, age, that sort of thing. It's more how the pieces fit together, and and how you have that come together during training camp, during preseason, during the early part of the year, during some of the challenging ups and downs of a season. So there's no real ideal mix. There's no ideal formula. It's more of, it's the group that starts the year together has to have a real mindset to find their way to grow into a really good team, into a strong team, into a resilient team. And that happens on a day-to-day basis. And it's by growing from within. It's by growing within your season on a day-to-day basis.
Dave, what do you need to have happen to get Andre Burakovsky back to the player he's shown he can be? Obviously the injuries have factored in, but to get him to be the player you need.
I think Berkey's got to play. Bottom line. I mean, if you look at his life as a player since last February, and the amount of time that he missed, he came back Game 7 this year after having missed all of that time, gets injured again with a different injury, and I believe at that point in time, I've got some of them. I mean, I believe at that point it was 20 games that he missed. So again, extending that period of time out of the lineup, and then sporadically still having another, in and out of a couple ins and outs of the lineup. He needs to play. That's the biggest thing. In order for him to get back to where he needs to be and where we need him to be, which is an instinctual player, especially offensively with the pace and the way that he plays, he's got to play. And that's why a real positive for him is to be able to go and play in the World Championships this year. Then from there, it's a process of making sure he has a great summer where he is healthy and ready to come into training camp and have a high-level training camp, not one where it's part of his rehab or part of his return. He's ready to go. He's ready to play. He's ready to be at his level. So for me, that's the biggest thing for Berkey.
You mentioned roles and how important it is empowering players in that. Last year it was the hallmark of the team.
It was.
Everybody accepted it. Mm-hmm. What is the difference that you see a little bit this year, maybe with you were saying not on the players, or clarity, or matching guys up pairing-wise online?
Yeah, it's there's not a magic formula to it. And we found some strides this year where the chemistry of our group and the pace of our group looked exactly the way that we wanted it to. But the reason I say that that we didn't achieve that ultimate goal of really finding that rhythm, it's in the results. We're a group that, and we're going to continue to be a group that is going to excel and win games through depth. That doesn't mean that we're not going to have certain players that play more minutes. That doesn't mean that we're not going to have players that we expect to score, players that we expect to be more efficient in their checking roles. But that rhythm we didn't find this year. If I had the answer, if I had the answer as to why we didn't achieve that, I don't think I'd be standing here today. We'd be out practicing right now. So we have to look really closely and hard at that. Part of that is communication. That communication starts with me. It starts with having guys understand their roles, really feel value in their roles, be comfortable doing it on a night in and night out basis. So these are all hard things that, that we have to look at right now, that we have to face. And, as we go forward, I mean, that's part of our discussion in terms of what our ultimate roster looks like coming out of training camp. and that's part of the work that we have to do during training camp next year.
Have there been any discussions as to how the team plans on handling this upcoming class of free agents?
I haven't had any of those discussions at this point in time. I mean, that's a better question for Ron, for sure. You know, I'm just not at a point yet coming out of the season where I've had a whole lot of thought put into that right now. And right now my thought is in wrapping up, you know, this season, in gaining as much knowledge and information as we can before guys disperse for the summer. So, you know, that's a step in the process that's down the road, and like I said, more of a question for Ron.
Dave, throughout the course of the season, after some of the losses, you said you wanted the team just to flush it and get back to work the next day.
Yeah.
In, you know, these meetings and getting a feel from these guys,
yeah,
how much of the message is I want them to feel what this is like and then go forward, or is it just look towards the future and get better from there?
No, yeah. If I want to make sure I'm answering your question properly. I don't believe I have to challenge our guys to feel this. They feel it. We all do. You know, one of the real things that, you know, part of the evaluation is, you know, not just flushing a loss. It's also evaluating a win. It's evaluating the performance, and you know, how did we do at that this year? Did we do did we follow up the next day in practice with you know, with the right message, with the right process, whether it's coming out of a win or a loss? That's all part of this process here, and there is valuable information to be gained from the perspective of our players as we go through some of the you know, postseason meetings here.
Dave, because Matty is such a big part of what this team is building towards here, what do you kind of make of his season with the points dropping a little bit and the way he played, and kind of how would you put his season into context?
Well, for me, there's some different stages to Matty's second year. You know, the early part of the year, offense was hard to come by, right? We talked the first several weeks of the year about, you know, when are the goals going to come and things like that. You know, my perspective on Matty's season is that there were ups and downs to it, and he stabilized it and played some of his best hockey down the stretch, which to me speaks to a couple of things. Number one, it shows and continues to speak to his mental toughness and his commitment to the game, to the team, to getting better. And being able to stay with that, having the mental toughness to stay with it and play his best hockey as we came into the last couple of months. So that's really positive. Some of the, you know, you talk about the drop in offensive production. Yeah, I took a few minutes even just the last couple days. You know, look at, I don't want to compare him to these players, but look at some of the good young players in the league. If you watch, you know, and look at Dylan Larkin's process 5 years into his career. It's a process. It's a process. This is a hard league to become an everyday dominant player in. Nico Hischier, look at his process. Nate McKinnon took 5 years of up and down before he became close to, you know, a 100-point scorer. And again, I'm not categorizing, you know, Matty into that, you know, into the, you know, the realm of a player that's supposed to score 100 points a year. You know, that's not the case. What I'm trying to compare to is the process to finding who you're going to be in this league and being able to do it year in and year out. Very seldomly does that happen in the first 2-3 years of a player's career that's in Matty's situation. We're asking him to do an awful lot, you guys, as a young player. We're thrusting him into a 20-minute role where he, you know, in his second year is playing against the best D pairs in the league, against a lot of the best forwards and defensive players in the league, and he has to find his way through that. I believe he was successful in finding his way through many of these developmental steps this year. He remains a hell of a teammate. He's a great competitor, and I'm proud of the way that he finished his year.
Are you ready to confirm a starting goalie?
You know what? Actually, I'm going to do it every game next year. I'm doing it because this year not confirming. That's all I'm saying.
Thanks, Zach.
Thanks, Dave.
Anything else? Good.
Appreciate it.
We're good?
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good summer.
Thank you.